All right, folks. Cool video we're gonna do today. A recap on my 2024 season. So I might do some screaming, I might do some crying, and I'm gonna do a little bit of smiling. But we're gonna take you guys back as I'm fishing out here today on the river, and we're gonna go through each and every stage, and I'm gonna kind of talk about and elaborate on why I feel like I did really good, why I did really bad, what I think I missed. Of course, now hindsight's 2020. I saw it live after the fact, you know, how guys end up catching them, da-da-da-da. So I kind of have my own mental image of what I probably could have done better. So I want to take you guys through that, walk you through. So some of my tournament anglers out there, especially my young and up and comers, I feel like this may be a helpful video because you always want to try to figure out what you missed, what you could have done better. I mean, simple, small adjustments, just as simple as a bait change, whatever that may have changed the outcome, you know? And I had experienced a lot of that this season. So I'm just gonna take you guys through it, stage by stage. Y'all stick with me. I'm gonna have some fun out here fishing, tell you guys all about it. All right, folks, so we're gonna kick it off with stage one, okay? Stage one, Toledo Bend, what is that? Forget the town, Louisiana. Manny, that's right. Manny, Louisiana. I've been to Toledo Bend one time previously when I was on the Elite Series, 2017, my rookie year, I believe. And place was really tough then, actually. Had a decent finish. I think I finished in the 30s back then. But anyways, fast forward to 2024, it's a totally different game. I spent a little time there earlier in December pre-practicing. And the one thing I learned about Toledo Bend right off the bat is it's loaded with some bass. I was finding schools in pre-practice in December, 30, 40, 50, 70 fish deep schools. It was unlike anything I ever saw. Of course, all using live scope. And I'm really excited going into this event, man, because I know what lives in this place and how you can run that scoreboard up. And so we get there. Practice was mediocre, I'd say. Found a few fish shallower in the grass. I don't know why I always seem to get caught up fishing grass and shallower like that. It's just my comfort zone, I guess. It's what I'm used to. Well, that's exactly what I did. But it wasn't a bad thing, you know. It ended up, for me, I mean, I finished 15th in the tournament, so I ended up having a really good finish. I missed out on a lot of the pelagic fish that those guys were catching out on the main lake. Big numbers. My boy DC ended up winning it. I mean, you guys saw how he did that. He just found some really big groups of them, and that's what you got to do in our format, man. You know, guys caught a lot of big ones still, but you have to exploit the format. When they say every fish counts, it has never been any clearer or truer to me that you need to literally catch as many as you can. We had a 2-pound minimum. Hold on. 2-pound minimum there. Little guy. We had a 2-pound minimum there, and that place is just full of 2+ pound bass, man. And so I had a issue on day 3 knockout round. You know, I caught them really good the first 2 days, made the top 10 in my group, but I had an issue on knockout round day that cost me tremendously. And I feel like that's the only issue. I had some mechanical failure. And I feel like that's the only thing that cost me that week. You know, I really feel like if I didn't have those mechanical issues, I would have had a top 10 finish on that final day. I would have been out there with them boys. But nevertheless, you know, it just didn't happen. But caught me a big giant on knockout round day. Matter of fact, my first bite on day 3 was at 8:15, caught on a scope stick. You guys saw that on the YouTube channel, on a jerk bait. And that was just, I mean, I don't even need to have to explain that. An 8-pounder? Yeah, that was awesome. Bluegills over there biting on me. But looking back at that event, what could I have done better? You know, I'd have spent more time on that main lake looking for the... Oh, hang on, baby boy. I'd have spent more time on that main lake looking for those bigger schools. I found a lot of fish in that 4 to 10 foot range in grass. And they weren't quite schooled, but there was enough of them to where I was like, I need to be fishing shallower. And again, it worked out for me. It just wasn't the winning deal. And it's so easy how can I say, to miss the winning deal, to be on the winning deal, but yet, or not be on the winning deal, be near the winning deal, but yet you just miss it just by a little bit. And I don't know, great finish though, 15th place. I'm happy with that. Santi Cooper, man. This was probably one of the more frustrating events of the season. I finished 41st place out of 80. I was the first guy out of money, of course. That was a very tough event, practice and in the tournament. I had a hard time figuring out just what exactly was gonna go down. I did end up having one good day of practice where I had like 15 bites on chatterbait on trees, shaking them all off. I felt really strongly about that. So I started on that on day one. I was fishing on Lake Marion, running up near that Jack's Creek area. And dude, I run in there and there's Cole Floyd's actually in there with me, and so is Andy Morgan. And I get back to where I want to be, and man, I fished my heart out in there. And I think I had like 3 bites, dude. And I want to say maybe two of them scored, and I think I might have lost one, you know, something like that. And I ended up catching them there though, fishing brush piles on day one with a jerk bait and an eco rig, and that had me sitting pretty good after day one. I want to say I was inside the top 20 for sure. I can't remember exactly where I was sitting, but I was inside the cut. I just needed to replicate and have a better day. What happened to me there is one day of practice I had a couple really big bites. Colin was with me. You guys seen it in the practice vlog where I caught a couple big and swimming a jig, man. And again, I got sucked in. I'm like, dude, I can go shallow, do what I love to do my thing. If I get a couple of these bites swimming this jig up shallow, it's gonna be all good. And I stuck to that, man. And so day 2, instead of running back up north, fishing my jerk bait and my Nico rig in brush piles, which there was quite a few fish in those brush piles, I could have stuck with that. I did not. I opted to fish a totally different area. The weather had warmed up just a hair, and I really felt strongly that swim jig bite was just going to transpire, and it never happened. So I resulted in flipping trees in that Utah Springs area, and I caught some fish, but I never caught a big one, man. I'm flipping a 1/2 ounce jig with a big chunk on the back. I just knew one of them bites was going to end up being like a 6, 7, 8, 10 pounder. And every time, I think the biggest fish I caught was like a 2.5 pounder. Meanwhile, I got Dave Lefebvre fishing right next to me. I learned something too. Shout out Dave Lefebvre for this. He was finesse fishing on them trees. And I have heard in years past that Santee was a place where they catch them really good on finesse there. But I just couldn't, I don't know, it's spring, it's February. I felt like a big, bulkier presentation was gonna be the deal to catch a big one. But meanwhile, I'm not getting a bite. Dave Lefebvre then caught 3 6-pounders right near me. And I'm like, okay, this is frustrating. And I just, the light bulb never went off. I couldn't see what he was throwing. I could just hear score tracker, you know. Dave just caught another 6-pounder. I'm just like, oh my gosh, bro. And so it never happened for me, man. And I ended up finishing just one out of money. I got knocked out in the last 10 minutes. And this is what I'm talking about. It was so frustrating. I catch a bass. Hang on. Another baby boy. I catch a bass with like, I don't know, 15 minutes to go. I get a score tracker update. My guy's like, all right, Mark, you're now in 17th place, 18th place. I'm like, all right. And I'm looking at my watch. We only got like 15 minutes to fish. The bite's been super slow all day. Guys haven't been catching them. I'm feeling good. I'm like, well, worst case scenario, I'm gonna make 10 grand, get out of here with a relatively decent finish. And so I'm like, all right, I ain't worried about that. Well, 5 minutes to go. Jeff Sprague catches an 8-pounder and somebody else catches like another big one. And you already know the end of that story. Knocks me out of 17th, 18th, 19th, puts me in 21st place, lines out. Good job, Mark. You get $0 and you go home with a 41st place finish. And that, man, that was just a tough one, dude. That sucked. I lost a bass on day 1 that I posted on Instagram and was also in the YouTube video. Over 5 pounds, had it in my hands. It was in my hand. Had the bass in my hand, came off, That fish alone cost me 10 grand plus, plus I would have finished like, I don't know, 5 more pounds to what I had. I would have finished, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 places above where I was at. Again, more frustration, man. But that's just part of bass fishing. You're going to experience that. So what I would have done differently, hindsight, I would have definitely spent a lot more time fishing brush piles, sticking with the offshore bite. It just seems that there were more fish using that stuff during that time of year. It's just so hard not to fish them cypress trees because there's so many of them. They look so good, but you can get just lost in the sauce. I mean, there's literally millions of cypress trees. Which one do you cast to, flip to? It's just so easy, you know? The other thing too, I wish I would have took some more time to explore some other areas. You know, I was my first time ever going to Santi Cooper. I don't know it, so I didn't have a lot of time to explore. I didn't get down there and pre-practice. So trying to get all that done in 2.5 days was very difficult. But yeah, what I would have done different, I would have stuck with my guns with that brush pile deal. Utilized some more of my ride around to find some more brush piles and just continue to do what I was doing, man. Missed the boat on that. And it is what it is. Shout out to J-Dub. He won that tournament. Combination of on piles and stumps and things like, you know, cover that you couldn't visibly see with your eyes. You had to find with your electronics. And that's where we're at these days, man. You know, guys are going to find that obvious stuff. It's over with. Guys are finding that. They're going to exploit that. They're going to smash them on that. And that's only going to be good for one day. So after you catch them on that obvious stuff, you have to invest some energy into what we call, you know, sneakier areas. It's just what you're going to have to do, man. So that's what ended up happening there, man. And a lot of lessons learned at Santi Cooper. All right, championship, Red Crest, not a stage, championship. I finished, what'd you say, Colin? 42nd out of 50. 42nd out of 50, y'all. Terrible. You know, that tournament is the championship. There's no points. You lay it all on the line, right? And that's how I went into it. Problem, I got sucked in again. So now we're 3 tournaments in, and I've been sucked in now. This is going to be the 3rd suck in. Yeah, this is the 3rd time me getting sucked in. And what I mean by that, I went out there and I had an excellent day of fishing shallow, which is my strength, how I prefer to catch them. It's just what I like to do. And that's and that's what I ended up doing. I got sucked in, dude. Day 1, I don't think I caught 3 fish. You know, I was catching them skipping a wacky. These are pre-spawn spawning bass. And dude, they were like on every dock, and it was like they were on every hole in the grass. It was like I just couldn't do nothing wrong. Fishing one of the better creeks on the lake right there near takeoff in beeswax. I mean, dude, I just felt really good about it. But it just did not happen, man. It did not transpire. I went out there day 1 of the tournament, stuck with my guns. I want to say I caught 3 bass, maybe 4 bass. It was terrible, man. I knew guys were going to catch them on forward-facing sonar. I knew it. Down the lake, pelagic swimming bass. I knew that was going to go down. I did some of that in practice. You guys saw that in the practice vlog. And I caught some doing that, right? But I didn't feel strongly about it. I felt like I was getting better bites more consistently fishing shallow with the potential of catching 6, 7, 8 pounder. I mean, that's what lives there. They got some really big bass in there. The flip side to that, I didn't consider what if that doesn't happen? What if it doesn't go down? And I didn't really have a plan B, so to speak. So I went out there, didn't catch crap. I'm down in 42nd place. I knew guys were catching them down the lake scoping. And then I just decided that I didn't want to get in guys' way. You know, that was one of them deals where sometimes, man, you got to be a little, how can I say? Not a lot of guys don't have it anymore, man, but you got to have some ethics in this game. I know how guys are catching them. I know where they're catching them. Because I suck day 1, I'm not finna run down there and get in their way. So that was a decision that I made for self. I was happy about that decision. I just didn't. I just wasn't gonna do it. You know, I had 3 of my roommates down there doing that, and they did that day 1, and I for sure wasn't about to get in their way. So I just did my own deal, man. And I had another tough day on day 2. It was what it was. I'm gonna tell y'all something. Biggest lesson I learned this year was, if you can use forward-facing sonar, you better be using it, man. You better be doing it. Otherwise, you're getting kicked. It's just that simple. It really boils down to that. Because as we go through these next tournaments, you guys will start to see a trend, and I'll explain that. So 42nd place, Red Crest. It sucked. I got whooped. But my boy came through again. My boy DC. Back to back, damn near. Two-time Red Crest champion. The first one to do that. Dustin Connell, man. Shout out to my boy. 59th place. Dale Hollow Stage 3. And it's sad going through some of these, man. Yeah, I know it. This is sad to me. It's hurting my feelings. All right, so. Oh, for sure. 59th place, man. So I go out there on Dale Hollow. Have a decent practice. It wasn't great. But I was catching some fish. Scoping, of course. Dale Hollow. Catching them on bait. Catching them, you know, just swimming around. Smallmouth, largemouth, both. You know, I felt kind of good about it. This is where I messed up, y'all. Dale Hollow. I messed up. Snag. Last day of practice for a couple hours, I go shallow. And I'm seeing fish on bed. I ain't gonna say everywhere, but I'm seeing quite a few of them up shallow. And I'm like, uh-oh. Am I missing a boat on that? Because if I'm missing a boat on that, I would much rather catch them going down the bank than I would scoping. I would prefer that. But if the scope bite's better, then I'm gonna do that, you know? So I get out there, and day one of the tournament, I start off scoping. I get in this area, and lo and behold, who come rolling in? After I'm already there, spot locked down, ready to start fishing. Who rolls in? J-Dub. I'm like, huh. So it's me, Jacob, and Andy Morgan in this area on day one. I can't remember what group I was in, but we start off. Man, I'm not really catching much, nor am I seeing much. There's a pile of bait in this area. And you guys seen this area multiple times because Jacob ended up doing really well there. Michael Neal ended up catching them there as well. And I knew they were in there. I found it in practice, and there was quite a few fish in there when I found it in practice. Well, I get in there and I catch one bass in there. About an hour goes by and I got one bass. Jacob has caught like 6, and Andy Morgan's caught 0. So I'm like, all right, something that ain't good. I'm like, either he's just on a different group. I don't know. The little zone that I was in, I wasn't seeing them. That was the other thing too. It's not even that I wasn't catching them. I just flat out wasn't seeing them. And so, you know, I kind of left that area and left it to Jacob. Well, when it was all said and done, he didn't caught like, Jacob went in there and caught like, I don't remember. He caught like 25 pounds out of there. I'm like, damn, that's pretty damn good. Meanwhile, I got one bass. So I take off and I'm just going through the motions, running all the things that I know to run to get bit, and it just ain't going down, man. You know, I'm fishing shallow, I'm fishing deep, I'm dragging Carolina rig, I'm throwing all sorts of, that must have been a bluegill. I'm throwing all sorts of baits, and it's just not happening, man. So this is a problem. This is what happens when you got where you are in life by staying true to fishing the way you like to fish. Again, you guys know I'm a natural shallow guy. Of course, I'll get out there and scope with the best of them too. I'll do whatever it takes, but I always end up reverting back to fishing shallow when things get tough, because that's what I know. The problem with our format, and sometimes we go to fisheries such as Dale Hollow, there's so many bass, you cannot keep up, dude. Trying to fish shallow, trying to fish the bank with the offshore scope bite. You just can't even do it. And in that day, it was no different. So we get out there. I'm getting my butt kicked at this point, man. So I just said, you know what, screw it. I go to the bank, man, and I start mixing it up. I'm sight fishing. I'm doing that. I'm doing all sorts of things, and I'm catching a few too. I'm catching some, but I'm just falling down that dang on leaderboard, man, because them guys that found them scope bass, or the guys that went into that tournament and they committed to sight fishing and committed shallow, they're just catching them way faster than I ever thought they could, man. And so I ended up having a terrible finish. You know, I feel like that was an event that I finished 59th. I should have committed wholeheartedly to scoping in that event, and I didn't. Got sidetracked with a couple sight fish, and once you do that, it's over with, dude. It is over, dude. You cannot do that. You cannot commit to those shallow fish after you've already wasted a period trying to scope. It's usually you're gonna do one or the other. And so for me, I tried to do both, and I spread myself too thin. And that's how you get yourself a nice 59th place finish. So hindsight there, scoped. You should have scoped all damn day. All right, stage 4, Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma, 63rd place finish. Let's talk about Lake Eufaula. That's where I had the mental breakdown at, y'all. I don't know if y'all remember that in the video. It was way worse in person. If you was there, boy, I had a breakdown. But actually had a pretty decent practice stage 4, Lake Eufaula. What was going on there was a shad spawn, but you had pre-spawners on shad spawn fish. Usually with the shad spawn, it's post-spawn bass that you're catching. Bass that just got done spawning, right? At Lake Eufaula, these were pre-spawners, and in some case, even spawners, dude, that were spawning, eating these shad that were spawning, right? It was a very weird situation, but hang on, Colin. Very weird situation, but it was what it was. Well, of course, Major League Fishing shows up to a place. What happens? We got tornadoes. We got crazy weather rolling in. It was just wild, bro. The tornadoes on the lake, dude. Guys are recording that. I remember pulling off the water that day. I said, I ain't playing with no tornadoes. Water came up 4.5 feet. It was just crazy, man. A ton of water influx. Fishing just went from being okay, decent, to just hella tough. You ain't catching nothing, almost. And man, I get out there on day 1. I want to say I zeroed period 1. I didn't catch a single bass. I was catching them on flat points, cranking pretty good. I mean, pretty dang on good. And I felt really good about that. But the water came up so high that the stuff I was fishing was so far underwater. But here goes some game for you guys. Whenever the water comes really fast like that, 2 things are going to happen. You either going to have bass move up with the water and flood the shallows, or this is what happened at Lake Eufaula, or they're going to stick to the original bank line. And that is it's such a concept that's so hard to visualize and actually stick with, because I'm looking at this cypress tree right there. I want to go flip a jig next to the cypress tree, but that bass is really 10 feet off the bank on that little shrub that he was on before the water came up. And it's just so hard to mentally accept that. And so I took the mindset of, I'm gonna move up with the fish, and I shouldn't have done that. I should have fished that original bank line. Guys that caught them there, a lot of guys were fishing the original bank line, and that was a much better deal. And so of course I had to learn that the hard way. But it is what it is, man. Day 1, I go out, I catch 3 bass, I want to say, and I got super lucky. This is what saved me day 1. One of those bass was a 5-pound, 12-ounce largemouth, a freaking giant, and that got me back into heavy hitters too. So that fish was very critical, and I had 9 pounds on day 1 is all I had for 3 bass. But that one bass kept me in contention. I'm inside the cut with 9 pounds. And I caught that fish off a single cypress tree, and the other 2 I caught off of docks. And I don't know why I got so caught up on that dock deal. I felt like docks were one of the most consistent pieces of cover on that lake. Obviously, as the water goes up and it goes down, docks don't move. So I felt really good about that. I'm like, if I just go out here and fish docks all day and keep throwing my Nico, which is what I call all 3 of those bass on, I should be okay. Well, not so much. I did the exact same thing that I did at Santi Cooper. I switched zones, I switched areas. There was only 2 areas on that lake, maybe 3, that had fishable water in it that wasn't just completely blown out. And that was that Long Creek area, and then that other area they call Porm. These are 2 community areas, but they also have probably the highest concentration of bass in that system. But I switched areas. Day 2, I'm like, I'm gonna fish Longtown. And those other fish I caught on the other end of the lake down near Porm. And I feel like that was probably another poor decision too. But I went out there, man, and I caught a couple of bass. I missed a couple of bass, and then I just had a freaking mental breakdown, man. And we only showed you guys some of my mental breakdown in the video because I didn't want y'all to think I was too crazy. But your boy was out there, man. It was tough on me, man. I don't know. We have that in this sport. I guess every sport, man. I just got to a point where I just felt like my performance wasn't matching, wasn't performing as I thought it should perform. I don't know. It was a mess. But anyways, we got out of there with what did he say, 59th? 63rd out of 80, you guys. So now this is back-to-back bomb tournaments, and I think that too played into me having this mental breakdown. I missed a cut just about one place at Santi. I go to Red Crest and just completely bomb. Then we leave there. I go to the next tournament, finish 59th at Del Hollow. I'm just like on a string of bad events, man. And then we go to Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma, and I finish 63rd, dude. And it just knocks all the wind out of your sail, man. It just makes it really, really tough to remain competitive. But the one thing I learned about not catching them, and the one thing I know, little guy on the old jig though. Well, y'all saw that hook set, boy. Ain't nothing like cracking one. I'm sorry, there just ain't. He ain't but a pound, but popping one like that on old jig, yeah, I like that. One thing I learned though about these tough tournaments is they're just for that day. It's a tough tournament for that day. That's it. You move on, there's gonna be better days. You gotta always remember that, man. That's the one thing that keeps me inspired when I'm sucking, is I know that there's gonna be a better day. I know it. When's it coming? I don't know, but there's gonna be a better day. So that was Lake Eufaula, man. Tough event for me. 63rd. You know, I'm down in the pits, as they say, at this point, man. And I'm just ready to get to the next tournament and see if I can't have a better finish, man. That's all I'm thinking about. All right, stage 5, Chowan River, man. I had a really good event, 12th place. Still kind of bummed I didn't make the cut there, but that's fishing, man. But I had a hell of an event. I caught a lot of big fish that week. And guess how I caught a lot of them? Scoping, of course. But I did catch a 6-8 and a couple other good ones off just regular trees, not scoping. But again, I think the theme is, and I know it, when you can scope, you scope. You saw Drew Gill, he won that event. Shout out to Drew. Scoping. So yeah, that place was really a big place. A lot of water to try to cover. You all right back there, Colin? A lot of water to cover with 2 different rivers, the Roanoke, and then you also had the Chowan, and plus the sound itself. I mean, it's just a terribly huge area. Started in Roanoke catching flounders and all kind of other weird stuff. I just wasn't seeing the size. A lot of fish in that Roanoke. They were small, dude. Michael Neal smashed them up in there though, but I think he was way up above where I was fishing when I was in there, and it just wasn't nearly as good. But a place I excelled. So I ended up catching them ultimately in the Chowan itself, and I figured this bite out. You guys are gonna think I'm lying when I say this. Obviously, there were cypress trees everywhere. You can go skip a wacky Cinco on cypress trees and get some bites. You could. But that wasn't the deal. The deal was finding stumps off the bank and brush piles. Man-made brush that I think those crappie guys put out there. That was the absolute deal. But utilizing a jerk bait to call those fish up out of that stuff, man, was the juice, man. And I figured that out with 5 minutes to go. Last day of practice, no lie. I get out there, I pull up on these offshore leaners, I call them, and I panned over there with my live scope, and I see a couple. I throw my jerkbait by there, and dude, 4, 5, 6 of them dart out, come grab my jerkbait, and I end up catching 2 on 1 cast, 2 scoreable bass with literally 5 minutes to go. So I didn't have a great practice, so I said, what the hell, man, I'm gonna start right here. And I started right there, and I proceeded to smash on them, dude, that first period, day 1 of that tournament, all off of what I found with 5 minutes to go. And that's why it's so critical, man, that you maximize every moment of practice and pay super close attention to what's going on. Because something so simple that I could have, if I wasn't paying attention, I could have missed. I wouldn't have saw those fish swimming around. I wouldn't have got that bite. And before you know it, I'm back skipping a wacky around trees all day. And I may have caught them, but I very well may not have, you know. And so that was a key element for me. And so I rode that train, man. We rode it for 3 days, man. I was in second place after day one. Dustin was leading the group. So that's always cool whenever we can catch them like that. The whole house ended up making a cut, dude, which was dope. Adrian caught him. J-Dub caught him. It was just a good week, man. And day two, unfortunately, day two, oh no, not unfortunately, day two I did good. It was day three knockout round is where it was misfortunate, man. I started off really good. First bite of the day, 6.5 pounder on a tree. Boom, I leave there, I catch a 5.5 pounder, then a 3.5 pounder. My first 3 bites, dude, I had a super solid bag. And I thought I was going to ease my way into that top 10, man. I really did. But we all know how fishing goes. It humbles you quick. Then I went on a hell of a lull. And a lot of them areas where I had been catching just washed up. But, man, I wouldn't change nothing about that tournament, man. I think I may have rotated on a few other places more than I did. And had a couple of more bites because I missed the cut by like, I might have been 2 pounds, which is, you know, scoreable bass. Or no, a scoreable bass there was a 1/8, so like 1.5 scoreable bass, whatever. It was a really, really close. And it just shook out to getting another bite or two. Changes everything. So, you know, it's all good. What I've learned too, man, a bait that's just become one of my literal favorites is that dang on jerk bait, man. That jerk bait is something serious. It calls them up. It interacts. It's one of the few baits that interacts with the fish. And what I mean by that is once they see it and they kind of come out and look at it, at that point you can interact with that bass and kind of cat and mouse him based on his, you know, based on how he's acting, you know. And that's what I did there, man. For a pretty solid finish. 67th? Yeah. Good God almighty. All right, so then, golly, James River, the most disappointing one of the season for me. Well, yeah, it was. Hella hot. But dude, when I tell you this is in my, golly. What a blow up that was. To not be that big. Golly, my man destroyed that. Well, you got to watch them treble hooks with these rascals here. They will get you. He's trying to get revenge on you. Yeah, he is, but I ain't gonna let him. All right, James River, the most disappointing event damn near my career. Why do I say that? You guys know where I'm from. California Delta, tidal fishery. This is about as close as it's gonna get to being in my wheelhouse probably as it's gonna ever be. Had a pretty dang on good practice, James River. But where I messed up was I didn't want to run the tide just because of my unfamiliarity of the area. That's where I messed up. Should have definitely ran that freaking tide. Them areas are only good for a certain amount of time, and then you need to bail, because once that tide gets to a certain spot, they're just not biting like they were, straight up, you know. So I get out there, pretty good practice fishing creeks, throwing top water and flipping. Dude, I'm catching them on cypress trees. I'm catching them off grass and mud banks with a buzz bait. Dude, it was just good fishing. And I just felt like I was going to kind of waltz through that one. Just roll up, hit a few areas, you know, do what you do. Boy, was I wrong, man. Caught some fish, you know. But again, that place has got so many bass in it. Very similar to Del Hollow. You just can't go a long amount of time without catching them. And that's what I did, man. You know, I fished through some areas that I thought were really good when the tide was right, and I didn't catch them. See, and that's another critical thing on them tidal places. If you fish through an area and you put yourself in position to catch fish in a certain zone because you think the tide is right, and then that fails, you really behind the 8 ball. Now you kind of scrambling because it's like plan A ain't working. So now here you go to plan B, C, E, F, G. And it makes life rough, man. And that's what happened to me. So, you know, that was the worst finish of the season, man. And you talking about feeling deflated, especially coming off Chowan River where it was just so good. I'm like, dude, I just freaking destroyed them. But that Chowan's not tidal, but it's still a river system, man. And again, I felt so good about going into James. I just thought I was going to really smack him, man. And it did not happen, bro. So disappointment there. What I would have changed, I would have definitely fished a lot more. I would have ran a lot more water. As that tide began to come up in the areas where I was fishing, I would have got on that 250 and kept running upriver and got to some newer water that still had low water. That place is a low water fishery. You need to be on your best stuff when that tide's down, you know. And maybe y'all saw, maybe y'all didn't. Your boy tried to take a shortcut through one of them creeks. Don't ever try that, James River. You will end up on a mud flat, which is exactly what happened to me. It was no fun. Absolutely no fun. But we made it out of there. 67, that might be my worst finish since I've been fishing the Bass Pro Tour. Seriously. 67 out of 80 is crazy to me. Somebody got to finish there, and so it was me. St. Lawrence River, man. Last tournament of the season, I kind of did some shorthand math on what I needed to do in order to make the Red Crest, man. In order to get inside that top 40, I was sitting in 45th place. I can't remember how many points outside, but I knew it was doable. I just had to have a good day, you know. St. Lawrence River is another one of them places, man. Much like Dill Hollow, much like James River. When I say that, it's loaded with them, bro. Places got them. And I know that I'm going to have to catch them. What I'm going to have to catch, I ain't got a clue. But I know I'm going to have to catch them. So I go out there day one. First of all, rewind. I had a pretty dang on good practice. You know, I know where I want to fish. I know how I want to fish. Drop shotting is the main bait there. I mean, it always is. And, you know, that's what I was doing. And I was catching them, dude, in practice. I was having a lot of bites. Felt really good about it. Dude, a 5.5 pounder in practice. I was around some big ones, and I was around a lot of them, dude. And I mean a freaking lot of them. Damn it, hang on, Colin. Straight. And I mean, I was around a lot of them. So I felt really good about it. But I've had a couple practices where I was around them and I felt good about it and I sucked in a tournament. But the one thing I like about the St. Lawrence River is very consistent. It's not, although the current's always pushing, it's very consistent. It's not changing up a lot like the James with the tide. And the weather by this time is usually pretty stable too. We're up there in July, August, late in the summer. Weather's pretty stable. It's just summertime, you know? So that helps out things too. But good practice. I'm ready to get this bad boy going. I know I need to make the cut. Top 10 in my group for sure. If I don't make the cut, I do not have a chance at making Red Crest. I already know this. So I go out on day one and I had what I thought was a fairly decent day. It wasn't great by no stretch, but I want to say I was in like, I don't remember, I caught like 50 something pound, I think. I was outside of the top 10, that's for sure. And I knew I needed to have a big day on day two. And but we had some change of conditions. I just told you guys the weather's usually pretty consistent up there. Well, this day it wasn't. Day two comes in and we got a big storm coming in. We got 3 inches of rain this day, and so it's just a wet day. But man, I ran into a couple schools out there that were just freaking massive, bro. And I was able to capitalize on them. I didn't catch a lot of big ones on day two, but I caught 84 pounds of them. How many keepers was that?
29 for 84.
29 bass I caught for 84 pounds. So I caught a lot of like 2s and 3s, but gosh almighty, dude. You know, there were times where I was catching them every drop. It felt like just got lucky and ran into a big school of them, which is what I needed, man. And so that 84 pounds obviously propelled me from 17th place into 8th, which again, it's all about the opportunity. So now I got an opportunity. I'm in the top 10. When I think at this point in my mind, I think I've already made red crest. But what I didn't know is I hadn't. Although I had a good day, I still had my work cut out, you know. If I finished 20th in that event, I don't think I would have made it. I think I needed like a top 15 in order to make red crest. So I'm coming off an 84-pound day. I got the area figured out where I'm catching them, dude. And so we get out there, day 3, it's knockout round. And dude, I want to say my first drop, I catch one, like a 3-something. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, it's about to be another great day. Well, this is where smallmouth can get really tricky. As much as I love fishing for them, there's some tricky little suckers because they move a lot. I had a school found a fish that I was catching on day 2, which allowed me to get that 84 pounds. There had to have been 150 bass in this school. It was just a massive school. So I get out there and they are literally gone. Not a single bass in this area. The bait was there the day before. Obviously the bait's gone. And so what? They followed the bait, they're gone. So I'm like, damn. So now I'm just fishing around and I'm plucking off a few, but it's nothing like before, man. I was spot locked on a couple places and I'm just literally drop after drop. Boom, 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 good ones, you know? And that's not happening. So I get out there, but I'm still having a good day, man. I figured something out late in the day, probably second period, that really helped me. I started live scoping them, imagine that, but they were more like suspended, so to speak. It was very weird, man. But I started catching some like that, and that really helped me because it was like you know, whenever you discover a new bite or you're doing something different, it's just like a whole nother world opens up. And that's exactly what happened. And I was able to, I caught a couple really big ones, like a 4 3/4, a 5 1/4, that shot me right back up toward the top. And long story short, man, the wind picked up late in the 3rd period, man, blowing with the current, excuse me, at like 30 miles an hour, dude. And I can't even fish my spots, man, anymore. I'm just completely getting blown off. I can't fish. And so I had to pull an audible and run inside Chippewa Bay and largemouth fish, which I had a pretty decent day of largemouth fishing up there in practice one day, and I felt pretty good about it as well, but it just got completely blown out, man. There was nothing that I could do. And so I'm like, crap, man. I catch 3 or 4 largemouth. I lose a 4-pounder, you know, and that was, you know, St. Lawrence River, why I didn't make the top 10 was in some sense just my own fault. I lost several fish throughout the course of the week, broke a few off, things like that on day 3, and you just can't lose them. I missed a cut, I think, by 7 pounds, and I know I lost, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 bass that day. 1 4-pound largemouth right at the freaking boat. You guys saw that in the video. I mean, that fish alone, dude, puts me right back where I need to be, where I'm 1 bite away from making the cut, man. It just, you know, but I missed others that day too. That wasn't the only one, and you just can't miss these fish, man. When you're fishing against these caliber of guys, you cannot afford to miss them. But nevertheless, I missed them. It is what it is. I finished 13th? 13th at St. Lawrence River, got back into red crest, jumped 9 places, finished in 36th place overall, and that wrapped up my season on a super high note, just like last year, man. It was kind of weird, actually, kind of scary. Very similar to last year, how we wrapped it up. But it was with a good finish, man. So no complaints from me, man. We ended up making red crest. We made heavy hitters. We did everything that we needed to do. Kept my mental space in a good place, because I tell you, when you had them tough tournaments like that, it's easy to get mentally out of it. And I didn't do that. And so therefore, I'll see you guys at Gville for red crest and Smith Mountain Lake for heavy hitters. So that's my wrap, man, for 2024. It was kind of a tough season, but we did what we needed to do, man. And we kept our average up. So, you know, you guys saw that the hater comment video. People think I'm getting kicked out. Mark, man, you ain't catching them, bro. You gonna get kicked out, you and Adrian, man. I don't know what you boys gonna do. Well, my career average, I've been fishing Major League Fishing for 6 years now. For 6 years, that's a long time, dude. My average is 20th. So, I think I'm pretty solid. Top 35 is what makes the cut. And then next year, no, the year after next, we're going from 65 to 50. And so we'll have a great season this coming season, and we'll just increase that average, man, and keep rolling, man. So we in the game. Y'all gonna be stuck with me. Sorry, you guys gonna be stuck with me for a few more years, at least. As in like 5, 6, 7, 10, 15 probably. I ain't letting myself slip outside that cut, man. I love this game too much. I'm just gonna work harder, man, and keep it going. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video, man. You might have learned something. Maybe you didn't. Who cares about what Mark did all season? I don't know. I do, and I care to let y'all know. I'm gonna get back to fishing, though. I'm about to catch a big. It's hard to catch bigs right now at this little river. And a lot of bass, but a lot of them are smaller. But I feel like I'm gonna catch a big, though.